Good morning and welcome to the Field Report for Sunday, July 16th. This article is from the AP, and they suggest that the drip, drip, drip of the Russian leaking is having, it's throwing off the Trump administration off balance. Well, I think that's what it's intended to. That's why they call them leaks. And the whole point of national security and the whole things that pertain to protecting our overall security is securing information. Outside of that, whatever happened in 2016, because I really just started reading the article, I really am just doing what I call catching up, because lately there's a lot of news thrown at us, and maybe that's done on purpose. You have this whole story that just reignites with Russia. And maybe that's why these leaks occur, is to keep that story going. And it deflects off of maybe something we're supposed to be doing, okay? If we were to try to change the narrative and how the, obviously the pundits, this is what they want to hear about. They want to hear about the Russia story because it offers maybe an argument that would, let me say the word, would legitimize these claims. And I'm talking, when I refer to claims, maybe what Senator Maxine Waters suggests, that she will break the law if it means standing up, meaning that you can be elected and now you can break the law. Well, that's pretty much what the problem's been all along, is you're either lawmakers or lawbreakers. So thank you for that admission of guilt, and referring to the AP, which they said admitting it, or Ari Fleischer referred to this as, because he was a White House press secretary under George W. Bush, that even the omission is admitting, and that's unforgivable. And I don't know the details of that because I don't know who admitted what and what happened, but let me say this. I could see, okay, if you're ever working with maybe people that are Russian immigrants, which I don't think much about Americans, honestly, a lot of them, and we've heard a lot of remarks about what Russian immigrants think of Americans, and they live here in America. And then there's some that actually really like Americans. So I'm not sure our relationship with Russia is actually where it should be. Okay, that's obvious. But in New York, it's actually pretty normal to meet and talk with people from Russia because many of them live in New York. They're purchasing properties, houses. Actually, they can afford a lot more than the average American. Most of the Russian immigrants are in better shape coming into America. They can buy property, where Americans, they can barely pay their bills. And that should be a concern for the average American, actually. Our budget has been squeezed, and we want to thank those who squeezed us on both ends. Okay, this is why if you do a budget, if the average American right now does a budget and they see that they're in debt, instead of being afraid of what that mailbox is going to bring in, or picking up that call when the creditor is calling, because all of us have, made some poor decisions in this. We can all look at our personal budget. I can just illustrate this because I did my personal budget and I wanted to prepare this because I know that some people who actually do their own budget will look at like, okay, we have nothing coming in, so we're going to live on our credit. That is the option. The average person who has children and they know there's going to be an emergency, that is their emergency fund. There is no diversity, and if they really sincerely had a good portfolio, which it's almost hard to have a portfolio when you have nothing to start out with, but that's a good place to start anyway. There are people in the negative right now that know they have not enough to balance their own budget in their home, meaning you have to have enough just to cover the expenses, just to have that reserve. And a reserve would be your emergency fund, because the average person would not go out the store and frivolously shop if they knew they don't have an extra money coming in. And most people, when they're spending money with the thought in mind that they're still going to have the job the next day. And if we live within our means and we know we can only spend what we can today and save what we have, then a lot of us would not be in the situation we're in. And when you're crawling out of debt and you look at how you're managing your budget, I personally know I'm probably in a lot better shape than other people, and that's not saying much, okay? And that's the truth. But I also crawled out of years of debt, and I'm happy that I did that. But I'm looking at my personal budget here. and I took notes for this reason because I wanted to point out something. Because if I'm doing a personal budget, I want to do a three month budget, looking at what I have coming in. And as of right now, with a couple things pending, I personally would have to rely on friends or family or other people just to make ends meet today. And I'm going to explain why. Because the old income that I counted on no longer comes in, okay? And that happens, so I have to consider this. I have to be flexible. I can't be afraid of looking at the budget. I can't be afraid of what I have coming in. But I know that I'm in debt right now. And it's important that I get out of debt. Like, I have utility bills that I had to rearrange the payment plans. I had to move some things around so that I could stay on time and on budget. And that's, again, not saying much because, again, if we're spending our money on things that we're not supposed to spend it on, that would explain why sometimes we're in the situation we're in. And there are other factors. But the health of this country is a deficit. And if I was to look at an offensive strategy and how we can get out of debt and offer a safety or an action plan, I would look at what do we need first? Well, we need the basic needs met in this country. Okay, it's not up to government, but we can offer where there are experts or people that are, have the ability to, be flexible and renegotiate old accounts. That's what you do. Instead of ignoring your creditors, you call them up and you say, listen, I know I don't have enough money, but I want to renegotiate. Maybe I can pay off the debt if you would, maybe take it out of what they call, sometimes with the creditors, they pay off the account. And you take it out of there and you just manage it where you say you instead of paying the full amount, you could pay off like the difference, or maybe like an amount you can agree to. That is how you get out of. That's how you get out of the being enslaved to your creditors. Is you renegotiate your accounts. And anyone that's been an account executive, I worked for WorldCom, but back then I didn't know what I know today. I just thought it was a great job because it had a great title. To be honest with you, I had no clue what I was doing. Still sometimes dumb. Anyway, shut. Okay. Anyway, so knowing your value, okay. So Americans have to understand they are the higher priority. A Russian immigrant can come into this country because they come from a country where they have a better economy. That has to be the case because they can actually do more to help improve our economy than some of us can. So the higher priority on Americans is like taking care of your veterans, taking care of those people who are sick. If you can make the assessment, the canary in the coal mine is that when you can't take care of the poorest among you, you're only as strong as your weakest link, okay? That's the truth. America, when you are taking care of your poor, you can gauge how strong of a country you are. When you're poor and the needy in this country are going ignored or being neglected, that can tell you that's an example of how strong of a country is how strong is the poorest among you. And I'm not talking about having AC. I'm talking about overall long-term financial security for the poorest among you. And we're not always talking about welfare benefits. Extending it out for that average poor person where they can actually be in a position where you can actually advise them, where they can even have a small investment or savings account. Most of these people have never been even taught how to balance a checkbook, much less count change because of Common Core. And that's a thing you're going to have to teach kids and young adults how to unlearn habits they were taught. And that's not our fault. That's as a result of bad education policy. And that's unfortunate because you don't want to send out these kids who went to school, who learned ridiculous Chinese arithmetic, and they had to learn all these other languages, but they couldn't even learn the basics. I know of a story, and it was in Los Angeles, where a teacher had taken a gang of children. These kids they could barely show up to class, much less get an F in class. He took them in a matter of I think 3 months, from F students that could barely get to class. And they became, they actually made an incredible movie about it, but they actually became, I think they became experts in physics. It was incredible. So please don't say that the teachers can't be effective. We've been focused on a lot of the teacher scandals, but there's a lot of teachers right now that have gone unrecognized for their achievements. They can take a classroom of kids that are from a severely dysfunctional home and turn their lives around, and they're getting recognized in their school districts. I mean, we got to pay attention to what we do got going for ourselves. But the last thing I'm going to expect them is try to figure out how to balance a budget when they don't even know how to, they don't know basic arithmetic. No, but they've been taught Chinese arithmetic. And and I'm not just saying this, but most of these kids that go to school or have gone to school, they know how to weigh out how much an ounce of weed costs in cannabis, but they don't know how to balance their own checkbook. I mean, that's the truth. And not that I'm dismissing it, but, you know, I mean, it's pretty unfortunate that our values, where our values are, and I'm not saying it's, please don't get the idea that I'm against cannabis. That's not what I'm saying. It's just priorities, you know, but that actually is a source of income for some people. I mean, you can't argue. I mean, even strippers have a better income than some of us. And we're all trying to live honestly, right? You know, we're all trying to do the right thing here. But they make better money than some doctors. Maybe that's why the doctors go there. Maybe that's why. I don't know. Okay, so anyway, I want to talk about the cycle that America is breaking from, because there are a couple factors. I get it. There are a lot of weather events that I'm concerned about. Yes, there's a lot of national security issues. And I read these articles, and I'm still looking for this budget page. I'm sorry. Okay, I found it. When I read an article from the AP and I look at that and I think to myself, yeah, well, that drip, 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 it's amazing, because that was the same language we heard over the 8 years, the drip, 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 and all the executive orders that were thrown, that threw America into, like, threw a wrench in everything, literally, and I just leave it there. But good investors are looking at short-term gains, the easiest way to get out of something, and the long-term benefits of staying in something. So when you're looking at a forecast, they're looking at a couple things. This is just me, a working knowledge of it. They're looking at overall, what is the benefit to them? Do they like what they see? Okay, and if they like what they see, they're gonna want to know more about the company. And if I'm looking at a small company, let me use my company, for example, because it's a perfect opportunity to take advantage of free advertising. But if you're looking at a small company and you're saying, okay, yeah, I like the way they portray themselves. I like that they're boring, because that means they might actually make sense. I don't know. Sometimes. Depends. Okay, but they're looking at, personally, what's the advantage for them as the investor. And they don't want to take a big risk. They want to take a short-term risk and pull out, which I think that's the way to go. But anyone a financial planner is looking at, where are all your best investments and where are your safe investments? And the safest investment is always property ownership. And when the people have the ability to own property, they're not enslaved to a system. They become an asset to the community. And the thing that hinges, the big one here, is that they're in bank debt. So now they're in a position where, yeah, they're taking their investment, but they're investing back into the bank, because really that principal on their mortgage is going to be paid back to the bank. So they're really doing what they call a reinvestment in the bank. It's an advantage for the bank lender, because really the lender buys the property for them, but they're going to end up having to pay a mortgage interest for whatever term they have, and a percentage. Okay, and a percentage of that would stretch out their payments probably to 30 years, because that's how long it'll take to pay it off. But you know, a lot of people know, when they're managing their mortgage, okay, when they're looking at their mortgage, they have to think, okay, what do we have coming in? They have to look at overall what happens in a time of emergency. When if one of us gets sick, do we have a safe exit plan? Okay, well, most likely most people don't, but they're taking the risk on themselves, more or less. Okay, meaning they know they might have to work extra jobs, okay? But what happens? Where is that second and third income? And it's always been told to me that you should have 5 streams of income, whether it's a residual income or investment or, stocks. You want to make sure you're spread out. And the safe investments, the things that you need, emergency fund. A lot of people now are using storable foods as another commodity, which water and food is a absolute safe, probably the safest investment ever. Actually, if you saw all these companies right now that are actually making big gains, it's the supply companies, like the small suppliers, the small mom and pop companies, like what you see today are mainly survival companies. That's probably one of the safest investments that doesn't get reported at all. Because if push comes to shove and there was a major weather crisis, you need survival supplies, okay? That's a safe investment. If I was looking at a survival 401k, I would want my 401k plan to roll over into a safer investment, meaning I actually have something and I'm not going to get penalized when I have to take money out of my 401k. So I would take the risk of one or two ways if I had to take out of my 401k. I would want it to roll over into my property investments, which is always a safe investment. We know goes right back to the bank anyway. Or I would take that safe bet on storable foods and food and commodities, because here's the thing. You see China, they say follow the money. Well, China's buying up a lot of land where there's a lot of water. Okay, we know it's the safe investment. Water, we never knew that water, if you sell it in a bottle, that one day that companies would actually build water companies where they bottle water. But on the downside of that, we also learned that there's BPA. And, but there was a time where I don't recall anyone ever selling bottles of water. You were happy if you got an ice cream cone, okay, in America. I mean, we came from pretty poor upbringing, so we were happy if we got an ice cream cone. We're happy if we got a nap sometimes, too. And you're lucky if you had your own room. Literally. And that's my home. Anyway, so that's the kind of stuff I'm looking at. But I'm looking at the Safe Wise investment. And, yeah, of course, if you have a drip, drip, drip of news, which is, I love the language that's being used, because this was language we heard for about 8 years on our end of it. The cycle and the bad pattern Americans been in, and what can save America is having a safety action plan, an exit plan, a way out, giving Americans a way out where they can actually offer flexibility as an individual. They manage their own money. They manage their health accounts. They have a personal relationship with their doctors, meaning the doctors get paid, and it's not Medicare payments that are $11. It's not attractive. It's not lucrative for the average doctor to get a payment of $11. I mean, that patient walks in and they have to apologize because they're on food stamps and they have Medicare, but you're only as strong as your poor people. You're only as strong as your weakest link. And those poor people, most people who have a little dignity and respect for themselves, they don't want to be on these programs. But that's the program. Those are the traps in the system. Well, unfair is the only resort. And you're telling me, you as a smart investor, you're going to look at your poor people and you're going to say, I want to see our poor people be the strong link. If you have, it's just like in the military. You're only as strong as your weak link, your flank. My weak side is my left side, right? You saw the movie Blind Side? Yeah, you're only as strong. And if you have a blind side, which I would look at the people that aren't making it, that's your blind side. If you're strong on your blind side, you're going to want to focus on your blind side. It's called football, okay? Many of us watch football. You could take the same playbook and apply it to America here, and when it comes to financial, and look at your poor communities, and you could apply a baseball strategy. I talked to someone like Coach Dave, who knows that the playbook the card has not been in the hands of that average American, that poor mom and dad, or that single dad, or the single mom that is stretched so thin. They don't know how they're going to pay their rent, honestly. Right now, they don't know if they're losing their apartment or not. And it's even worse because coupled with that, you got the opioid addiction and you're vulnerable to all these other things. So it's either you put Americans back into the driver's seat, where you get them out of the hole that was created for them, and using that language, drip, drip, drip. Is that the reason that we're focused on the Russian probe stuff? Because it's obvious to me that the Russian probe, while it's important, it's totally taken away the focus off of the real important stuff. And if there's ever been an important time to level the playing field for that person that's going up to that apartment in the Bronx where, your next door neighbor is the stray cats, okay? And you don't really get a lot of time to get outside and exercise. We want people to get outside, breathe the fresh air. You know how hard it's been to watch some of us and our family and some of those people that suffered during 9/11, the grief that was not acknowledged many times during those 9/11 events. And it's a sobering event, but at the same time, I would like to see the next 9/11 event be how America turned this around, how we became the overcomers. Because for so long, we're taking a beating. And we listen to somebody like Linda Sensor, who has a way to flip the story around. Somehow, all this, I remember hearing the stories that they were hurrying up, trying to help the Muslims. The first initial reaction would have been, help the average American, help the national security. I mean, the idea that she makes this about the Muslims or the victims, this has always been the focus. And that's why they probably implemented all these other things, because the focus is always on one special group with a special group of special rights. I don't know in any, at least in America, or in some of our homes at least, that when you show favoritism, that changes the game, okay? We don't need anybody playing favorites. That's the danger we all face. When you're playing favorites and you're not recognizing hard work, and those people are only trophy pieces, I mean, come on, really? I mean, I want to see a day where the person out there who earned the title got acknowledged and recognized, and actually there's meaning behind that medal. A lot of people who are wearing that uniform don't even really feel comfortable wearing that uniform because it was done in dishonor. Many of our friends that served in military warfare, especially going back to Kuwait, not that they don't care about those medals, but those medals need to have meaning again. Those medals have been, a lot of their hard work, while a medal, okay, well, it doesn't really represent the real struggle that they endured, maybe on certain missions. But those medals mean something to some of us. When I was listening to my best friend, who's a Navy SEAL, the top Navy SEAL, tell me he didn't really care about his medal. Well, I do. I care about that medal. And whenever he decides to cough it up, I would like it. I want his medal. I want their medals. If you don't think your medals mean something, we'll take them. Because that means something to me. That means something to a lot of people that listen to this. It hurts me when you hear a Navy SEAL say this, when they don't think that their medals mean something, and that all they do is get ridiculed or called names. After what we went through, we have nothing to prove to those people out there. Their medals mean something. There should be a wall of medals right now in my house. That's how much I like medals. I want your medals. If you don't like them, if you don't like what happened to you, I understand, but I want your medals, and we will protect your medals, because your medals mean something to us. And it goes beyond anything. The ultimate sacrifice. These guys, the sacrifice. They've watched guys die in their arms, literally. I mean, most of these guys, their whole units are gone. Okay, they're the only lone survivors. I want your medals. I personally do. And I know I'm getting one at least. I know I'm going to get the one, the courage of bravery. You go beyond bravery, by the way. That's how awesome you are. Anyway, I didn't want to go through all that, but you see what's going on here is that if you care about that average guy or girl that wears that uniform at 19 years old, that's shaking their boots because they've never left home and never been on a plane ride before, and they're going in and swearing in, and that's the biggest moment of their life, the biggest disappointment is the coffee doesn't taste that good over there in the barracks, okay? Don't be too disappointed. You're not disappointed. You're not really there for the coffee anyway. And I realize that some of you are going to have to go without Starbucks. But you know what? We have our options. Like in this case, we have a coffee program ourselves. Figured if they're going to throw us out on the curb where we can't have a cup of coffee and, whatever. I mean, this is how petty. We want to get away from the petty debates. And that's why we have to get our country back to basic principles. A foundation which is built on and established with biblical principles where it started. There was a reason this country has been blessed, and it started with a small little group of people that were at Plymouth Rock and those little communities that prayed for the future prosperity of America. And today we are the inheritance of those people. We are the inheritance. We are the blessing that came for their hardship. Those people that started this country, they built this country with their hands and feet. Now we have machines and technology to do those things, but can you imagine America going back to doing what they have always done best when they're skilled and they're crafted and they take real pride? You can tell when you talk to some of these chefs and these men and women that cook and clean and cut, they do it with such pride and skill. That is America. That is where you see the bread and butter, because it's the heart of that man, woman. They know that in the morning they're waking up because they're doing it for their kids, and that is their blessing. That is their future. When they think ahead of themselves, they say, what kind of America do I have to look forward to raising kids in this? Well, I can say this. A lot of people would not have had children. A lot of people took the risk of having children, even knowing that America could be, there could be no future. But that's why I think many people showed up at the rallies, because they know that's all they got. And that is the nature of the true American spirit. It's not just patriotism. It's not built in all those things. It's not cloaked in all that. It's the spirit of freedom. It's the spirit of liberty. There's something in all of us when you're listening to a motorcycle and that loud noise that sometimes it's the sweet sound of freedom. When you see kids laughing and playing with their mom and dad, that's freedom. That is why I want those medals. Thank you.